You wake up early. You work harder than ever before. You pick up extra shifts, maybe even a second job, and somehow your life still feels more expensive. Your paycheck is bigger than it was a few years ago, but your bank account feels weaker. Groceries hurt, gas hurts, rent feels insane, and every month it feels like money disappears faster than ever before. Why? Because something is happening to your money, quietly, slowly, constantly, and most people don't even realize it until years later. See, inflation doesn't steal your wealth like a robber breaking into your house. It steals your wealth like a silent leak behind a wall, tiny at first, almost invisible, but over time, it destroys everything. And tonight, we're exposing the hidden financial system silently draining your money while you barely notice it. Because inflation is not just making life more expensive, it's changing how people survive, how people think, how people live. And once you understand how it really works, you will never look at money the same way again. You're not imagining it. Seriously. A lot of people think they're suddenly bad with money, but look around. Groceries cost more, fast food costs more, insurance costs more, gas costs more. Rent? That one feels almost criminal now. People are paying luxury prices for apartments with old carpets and broken appliances. And somehow, even after paying more, everything feels smaller. Smaller cereal boxes, smaller drinks, smaller portions, more fees, more subscriptions, more hidden charges. You buy your normal groceries, walk out of the store, look at the receipt, and your brain pauses. Wait, that cost this much? That feeling matters, because inflation doesn't just hit your wallet, it hits your nervous system, over and over and over again, until financial stress becomes normal. And that's where the psychological damage begins. Imagine dropping a frog into boiling water. It jumps out immediately, but if the temperature rises slowly, the frog stays. That's inflation. If prices doubled overnight, people would panic instantly. But when prices rise slowly, people adapt emotionally, even while suffering financially. That's why inflation feels so strange. At first, it barely feels real. An extra $1 here, $3 there, slightly higher rent, slightly higher bills. You adjust, then you adjust again, then again, until eventually your entire paycheck is being consumed just trying to maintain the same life you already had years ago. That's the trap. Inflation turns life into a treadmill. You keep moving, but financially, you stay in the same place. Or worse, you slowly move backwards. And the scary part? Most people blame themselves. They think, I need to work harder. I need to budget better. I should be doing more. Meanwhile, the value of their money is quietly shrinking underneath them every single year. Let's simplify this. Inflation is the loss of purchasing power. That's it. Your money buys less than it used to. Years ago, $20 felt like something. Now, you walk into a grocery store with $20 and walk out emotionally damaged, because inflation changes the value of money itself. Think about ice cubes sitting under the sun. At first, they still look solid, but slowly they melt. That's your money during inflation. The numbers look the same, but the power slowly disappears. And this becomes dangerous when wages fail to keep up. Because most people are not getting richer fast enough to outrun rising prices. That's why people earning more money than ever still feel broke. And honestly, that realization messes with people emotionally, because it creates confusion. How am I earning more but struggling harder? That question is haunting millions of people right now. Here's what inflation quietly does to society. It normalizes exhaustion. Debt becomes normal. Paycheck-to-paycheck living becomes normal. Financial anxiety becomes normal. Using credit cards for groceries becomes normal. And eventually, people stop asking why everything feels harder. They just assume this is adulthood now. That psychological shift is dangerous because when people normalize struggle, they stop resisting it. And inflation loves exhausted people. Exhausted people don't analyze systems, they survive. That's why so many people feel trapped right now. Not lazy, not stupid, trapped. They're constantly reacting financially instead of getting ahead financially. And modern life makes this even worse because everywhere you look, social media is screaming at you to spend. Better clothes, better car, better apartment, better lifestyle. Meanwhile, inflation is already eating your paycheck alive behind the scenes. So people turn to debt, credit cards, monthly payments, buy now, pay later, financing. And suddenly, your future income is already spent before it arrives. That's not freedom. That's financial suffocation with good marketing. Now let's go deeper, because inflation doesn't happen randomly. There's a system behind it. Governments print money. Central banks increase the money supply. Stimulus floods the economy. Cheap borrowing floods the economy. And when more money chases the same amount of goods, prices rise. Simple. But here's where things become psychological. Most people think inflation affects everyone equally. It doesn't. People who own assets often benefit. Stocks, real estate, businesses, investments. But people holding only cash, workers living paycheck to paycheck, savers with money sitting still, they get crushed slowly. Because while prices rise, their money quietly loses strength. This is why wealthy people obsess over owning assets. Because cash sitting idle during inflation is like ice melting under sunlight. And most people were never taught this. They were taught save money, but not protect the value of your money. That difference changes everything. Listen carefully. This may be the most important realization in this video. Your money is not just sitting still. It is slowly losing power every single day. Every year inflation exists, your dollars become weaker. Which means if your income isn't growing faster than inflation, you are quietly becoming poorer, even if your paycheck looks bigger. That's why inflation feels emotionally confusing, because the damage happens invisibly at first, not through one massive collapse, but through thousands of tiny losses, tiny bills, tiny fees, tiny price increases, tiny financial compromises, until one day you realize the lifestyle you once considered normal now feels expensive. And that is how inflation steals wealth, quietly, patiently. Psychologically. Humans are bad at noticing slow change. That's why inflation works so well, psychologically. If rent doubled tomorrow, people would panic. But if rent rises slowly every year, people adapt emotionally, even while getting financially crushed. Your brain adjusts, your standards adjust, your expectations adjust until survival itself becomes expensive. And companies understand this deeply. That's why products shrink quietly while prices rise. Less product, same packaging, higher price. That's not an accident. It's psychological pricing. Because gradual pain creates less emotional resistance. And modern consumers are constantly distracted. Notifications, bills, social media, stress, exhaustion. People barely have enough mental energy to survive, let alone analyze economic systems. And the system depends on that distraction. So, how do you protect yourself? First, awareness. Most people lose financially because they don't understand what's happening. Second, increase income intelligently. Not just more hours, more valuable skills, better opportunities, multiple income streams. Third, avoid lifestyle inflation. This destroys people quietly. The moment income rises, lifestyle rises too. Bigger apartment, new car, more spending, and suddenly nothing changes financially. Fourth, own appreciating assets whenever possible. Investments, businesses, skills.
assets that grow faster than inflation, because inflation punishes stagnant money. And finally, learn spending psychology, because emotional spending during inflation becomes dangerous. Stress spending, convenience spending, doom spending. Companies know stressed people buy emotionally. That's why modern marketing constantly targets emotions instead of logic. And real wealth, it's not just income, it's purchasing power, freedom, control, stability. Here's the truth most people realize too late. Inflation does not destroy people overnight. It slowly drains their future while they're distracted trying to survive the present. And the people who understand inflation early, they adapt, they protect themselves, they build strategically. But the people who ignore it, they slowly fall behind without realizing why. Because many hard-working people are blaming themselves for a system they were never taught to see. And once inflation changes your understanding of money, you start realizing something uncomfortable. Working harder alone is not enough anymore. Understanding the system matters because the game changed a long time ago. Most people just haven't realized it yet. So, if this video opened your eyes, hit like, subscribe, and comment below, "Inflation changed how I see money." Because once you understand how wealth is quietly stolen, you stop drifting financially and start protecting your future intentionally.